my accent. I'm originally from Budapest, Hungary. So I have a huge baggage of traumas that I started to heal when I moved to California. And when I moved to California, I took care of two kiddos. And that's when I realized that how much trauma we pass on to the next generation. And that's when I started my own healing journey. And that was the first brick in my current company called Aware Nest, because I'm bringing awareness to the nest and to the families and parents that how they can heal generational trauma with a holistic method called family constellation. So before we dive more in, you can find me on awareness.net or my email address is blanka at awareness.net, and then we can start to take the conversation from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So I know many times when people think of trauma, especially generational trauma, there's different definitions. So do me a favor, can you tell us what generational trauma is and what in general it looks like?
So, sure. So, people think that trauma is just like these big traumas, like abuse, like going through war or divorce or being fired or others. But trauma can be small. I don't like to compare traumas, that is, it's small or big, but trauma can be that when you were a child, somebody left you, or by mistake, of course, your parents left you in the supermarket for a couple minutes. And then in that moment, you felt the trauma of being abandoned. For a 3, 5 year old, you cannot tell that, oh, it was just a mistake from mommy and daddy because they didn't pay attention, but it left an imprint on you and on your DNA that somebody left me. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna die here? And that can be trauma too. So, generational trauma means that actually there are researchers that we carry traumas, what happened with our ancestors in our DNA. And for example, the Second World War, the Holocaust, the so many historical events, Hungary was loaded with it, the US was loaded with it still. It's just these are all in our DNA. So even if you didn't go to the war yourself, you might have a relative who survived or didn't survive, and you inherited their trauma. So, how it turns out in your life, it's like you might have financial problems, you might have fertility problems, you might have mental, physical, emotional troubles, or you are keep jumping to one job to another because you cannot hold on to a job for 3 months, or you are experiencing bullying. So stuff like this, it's showing that might be an event that happened generations back. And that's what we are tracing actually back in a session.
I'm glad you pointed that out because you hear the expression a lot of times, big T trauma and small T trauma. And maybe in general, people don't are necessarily not they don't want to compare it, but I guess that's a way of identifying that, well, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal in my life, but what may be little T trauma to me, to use the expression, may be big T
It was
trauma
huge,
to
yes.
you, right? So how can we identify um some of the behaviors that are happening due to our trauma then, especially those that are passed down, like you mentioned, from generation to generation?
So, when something big is happening in your life, like you are trying to conceive fertility issues, or you are noticing patterns of like attracting a certain type of behavior or a certain type of person. Patterns are usually good indicators that something is going on there. Or if you have chronic diseases for a long time, or you have like ADHD, ADD, or cancer, those are all good pointers that it's worth to actually look at it from a different point of view and go maybe a little bit deeper and see if some things happened with an ancestor before.
That's a good point because I look back at maybe some of the struggles that my parents had, or even my grandparents, which would be their parents, and so on. And that's only two generations back. And you're like, oh, okay, money was a sensitive thing for
Mhm.
those two generations. And then when I'm growing up, because we didn't have a lot growing up, I'm okay now. It's like, oh, okay, I figure out why money was sensitive to me because I was raised in an environment and that was passed down. Would that be an accurate picture? of it?
Yes, absolutely. It's especially the first 5 year is so important to kids in a kid's life. That's when you are just absorbing everything. And mainly you are absorbing from your main caretakers and like your usually your parents that what are they to how they talk about money, how they relate to each other. That's what be your first relationship pattern. It's like, oh, is it mommy and daddy tense with each other, but they are trying to smile at me? Kids are amazing actually picking up energy. Sometimes we are not giving the credit for them for what they are picking up. And also, they are mirroring our energy, which is a different story, but they are picking up what's going on. And I heard so many times people is like, oh, I didn't get divorced because of the kids. I have the ugly truth to tell that kids actually know before even you know. So, not getting divorced, I'm not forcing anybody or saying that you should get divorced, but your kids are knowing better than you that there is a tension, that mommy or daddy is not happy or something is going on. So, those formative years are huge because that's when 90% of your brain is just like exploding, it's just developing, and you are picking all these little and also the subtle information up. And yeah, as you mentioned, money is like, what did you hear? When they said that, oh, we don't have money for this or we cannot have this for Christmas. It's like, so what do you gonna learn? It's like, oh, it's like I don't deserve it. It's maybe my fault. So you are internalizing these, even if your mom and dad were like super lovely and they didn't have the money, they wanted to buy it for you. It's like, what are your filters that you are creating based on what you are hearing as a child?
And then as a child, it shows up in your adult life, and you look back and you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this is what it is. And when you mentioned the type of people that come into your life, you see some people, let's say, for example, there was abuse or let's say substance abuse in their life, right? Let's say
Yep.
alcohol, drugs, men or even women, like sexual,
Yep.
their
Yep.
sexual appetite couldn't be satisfied. And then some of these people go out, and when they're promiscuous, they struggle to understand why they're that way. But this goes back to the 1950s when your parents are doing it and your grandparents are doing it. How can the person then, in general, maybe safeguard themselves from such behavior and hopefully break that generational trauma?
So, as you mentioned, yes, and usually when we are doing a session, you realize that actually it goes back further than two generation. And family constellation is great because you get a different perspective. And even if like, oh, I hate my parents because of what they did, you realize that it didn't start with them. They already got a huge amount of baggage from their further generations. And maybe, as you mentioned, there was an abusive grandfather, but he was a very generous person in the village, and nobody believed that he is who he is. But the family knew the truth. And by the time it get it to you, it's like, okay, is it, I don't want to be this, but I'm actually, it's part of me. So it's just like you feel this trying to balance those two parts or more parts in you that why I am this, I don't want to be. And then you make a decision that from tomorrow I don't drink or I don't chase women. But then the next day come and it's like, again, it's like, oh, women, I love them. So it's like, why these two sides in you, it's like fighting. And then you are like, you go into this shame and guilt loop that I don't want to do this, I will. So, answering your question, that how can you break that? Bringing awareness, seeing your triggers, seeing your patterns. And if it's like you are going to one workplace to another, and maybe at the third one is like, okay, maybe it's not the people around me, not pointing fingers, but it's like what in my life or what in my personality or skills or others that I'm attracting these type of behaviors or I'm attracting these type of people in my life. So triggers and patterns are the first good points, and then bringing awareness to them, and then you can start that, okay, this is going on, what can I do about it? And then you make a conscious decision that I want to change. I'm not saying that with the decision from now onwards you can change, because you have to rewire your brain. And that takes a lot of energy and awareness, because it's like a river. The water was just going through that path, And then you one day it's like you are booking that path and it's like, okay, I need to build another stream. And so it's like I want so many times you have to just give grace to yourself and say that, okay, today I slipped, but I tried again. And you will have multiple opportunities. Life will test you when you decide that you want to change, that you can make that change.
Do some people refuse to see that and
Oh yeah.
ignore those signs?
Yes. I mean, it's much easier to stay in the lukewarm and just stepping in the lukewarm water or the swamp I call it, because actually like realizing that you are in the swamp and realizing that actually this is lukewarm, this is not even comfortable, it can be very painful. And so many people think that, oh, if I'm from tomorrow, I'm just meditating in my room and I find inner peace with candle lights, inner healing, it's uglier than that. It's like it's a lot of crying, it's a lot of like hating, and but it comes to an accepting. It's like a cycle with everything. That denial, are you staying in that stage of denial, or you are going to the anger? Anger is good because it's actually moving you out of that like status quo state, but you shouldn't stuck in anger where so many people are also stuck, not just in denial, but in anger that I'm angry at my parents. But how can you accept what happened and make peace with it? Not forgiving, because that's different, but accepting for yourself.
When you said that, it reminded me of a situation where someone once told me, she said that for me to accept what has happened, the trauma, not only that I caused, but from generations prior, I would have to be vulnerable. And she viewed
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability as a weakness. So
Mm-hmm.
in her mind, if she always had someone to conquer, right? Like she always had an attacker, whether it was real or fictional,
Yeah.
she felt strong because she always had someone to attack, to beat, to overcome. As soon as you show her peace, she became uneasy. She became anxious. She was like, oh my God, I don't have a suppressor. I can't be in the victim anymore. What role do you think then self sabotage plays in someone's journey out of the trauma, especially when they've identified it as far back as it goes? They're face to face now, but they're sabotaging their own progress.
Beautiful. It's a lot of pieces to unfold here. I love this. So yes, my nervous system was wired like that. My nervous system was calibrated on a very high level of tolerance, which I didn't realize for so long. But I was just chatting with my husband recently. Then I never experienced joy in my life because I was like dealing with something all the time, something big. And when there was peace in my life, I was looking around that, okay, something is wrong because I was calibrated on like a constant drama. And when I was in my younger relationship, bless those guys, we love them, um, I caused drama because that's what I knew. That's how I grew up. And they still love me, and we are friends with actually many of them. But going back, it was just like, this is how I operated. It was nothing wrong. It wasn't anybody's fault, but this is how it was natural for me. That was my default. And not until I started to do this healing journey was like, I can do differently. I can be, and as you mentioned, my husband is my first relationship that actually I felt that I can be vulnerable with. And that was a huge step for both of us. And I told him that I have trust issues with men because of my relationship with my dad, who is an alcoholic. And he said that, you know what, let's do it together. I will wait. And he didn't rush. He waited for me until I was ready for those conversations. And when I said that this is not feeling comfortable, this is hurting, and he's like, okay, what can I do to get through this or help you through this or support you through this? He didn't want to push me through this because he knew that this healing journey is mine. You cannot push anybody through, but supporting them through that journey when they are ready, and saying that. But he also needed the awareness from my side when I could say that, okay, this is coming a trigger, this trigger is coming from my childhood because of this, but let me work on it and try to redo it or rewire it. So it's a step, stepping stones. Yeah, it's like milestones.
For someone like you and many others, men and women, you hear that they do have trust issues. How important was it to hear the words, let's do this together? What can I do for you?
I just have chills. That was everything. That's why I'm married to my husband, because he's a very grounded guy, and I could do this journey with him. And he gave me the space, he gave me the time, and but you need a partner who knows who he is or who she is, who can support you in this journey. It's not like being perfect, but like knowing and again bringing awareness to the situation. And I bluntly told him, and I thought that he will run away. He didn't. And he was the first guy who didn't run away and just stood there anchored and said then, okay, I can deal with this. That's maturity, that's emotional intelligence, and that's what you need from the partner and from both sides, because there are times when I'm pulling him and there are times when he's pulling me now.
Does that emotion or that sense or that feeling of this person is going to leave me, does that ever go away?
No. But what I realized that in so many relationships, I wanted to leave. But I wanted to leave because I was so much in pain. I was so much hurt because of the relationships and others that I said that, you know what, I go out and I leave before you can. So it cannot hurt me that much. Actually, leaving seemed to be easier than staying in a relationship, even if so it was hurting to leave, but it was less painful to think about it than okay, I'm just done with this relationship before I actually love this person and he can leave me and that would hurt more.
And that's why I asked that question because you hear about like the attachment styles of people are anxious and avoidant,
Yeah.
right? And you'll hear a lot of people say that, well, it's going bad. I know that it's because of me, but I don't want this person to leave me because of generational trauma. So I'm going to sabotage it or I'm going to leave. Then I'm going to find someone else, do the same thing, wash, rinse, repeat. And as long as I'm always leaving, I don't have to face that issue might be with me because it doesn't ever reach that point. But on the flip side to that, the partners who are willing to help the person through their traumatic experience are probably sitting there thinking, I love this person,
Yes.
right? They love Blanca, they love terrain. I want to be there to help you, but now we're discarding them. To the partners who are trying to create that safe space, how can we reassure them to stay strong and not to maybe feel as hurt, even though it's hard, by what their partner is doing to them as they work through their journey?
Good question. And answering or circling back to your self-sabotage question is just the other person or the person who is hurting or in pain also has to ask herself or himself that do I love myself enough that the other person can love me? Because that goes back to the point that am I lovable? And that was probably the point when you were a child that you didn't believe that you could be loved for just being terrain or just to be Blanca without anything, without your good grades or bad grades or whatever. It's just like for who you are. And that's what these people in us see, our partners, that I actually love you who you are. And but can you see that in yourself that I'm actually lovable? We say other people that I love you, but it starts with like, can I love myself enough? Do I know that I'm lovable there? So for the partners is like, I know it's easier said than done, but don't take it personally. And you cannot save a person. I have a blog post about it because I tried to save my dad from his alcoholism for 30 plus years in all sorts of way. And when I realized that this is not my game, and stepping back and saying that I respect your life, I respect whatever you are doing, that slowly you are killing yourself, it's okay. I will be here if you need me, but I cannot live my life for you and trying to save you. So for this the same is for partners that you cannot save the other person. You can be the hero or the heroine. It will not gonna work or it will not gonna be sustainable, especially in a relationship. It's very energy draining. But the other person has to hit the rock bottom to realize that I'm keep jumping and I maybe I will never have a decent relationship, or stop and say that, oh, this actually hurts, but I will face my fear and I take a leap of faith and I try with that person.
Yes, because if that person doesn't reset the trauma, then all they're doing is they're going to pass it on. And the unfortunate part that I've
Yes,
seen to your point, Blanca, is now you're impacting someone else, and that could literally be the start of their trauma journey that they're going to be passing on to other people. And I've seen people where, and I've gone through this earlier in my life where you're patient with your partner, you're working with them, they're getting better, and then they do something that damages the relationships, and now you leave and you're left feeling empty because you poured into the relationship so much. And then to continue the cup analogy, the person just kicked over the cup and watched
it's
everything
film.
pour
Yeah.
out, right? Yeah. So I know it's easier said than done to be patient, but that is, I think, a big task to ask. What are your thoughts?
I agree. And so going back I did a lot of healing because when I was an au pair, I realized that if I would become a parent, I don't want to pass this on to my daughter or my child. I have a daughter now, but I'm still doing a lot of healing because I say that it stops with me. And I don't want her, she will have her own life and all challenges. I don't want to be a helicopter parent about that. But let me clear all those poverty, struggles, and suffering that comes from generations and over generations. And going back for patience, I agree all people have different tolerance level, and you have to decide that how long you want to stay or try to support somebody. It's like don't commit like a relationship suicide, and as you mentioned, you will feel so much resentment after you are like, I'm pouring this help and support and I'm trying to be everything for everybody, and it's like 5 years later the other person leaves, and then you are like standing there that 5 years of my life is gone for what? That resentment, it's a new trauma that you are just creating. So like how long you want to stay in this, and do you see any, like, okay, you chat about it and it's like, do you see any progress in the other person, or the other person is like, oh, I will do it later, I will do it later. Do they really want to change? We all slip and that's okay, but do you see any progress? And is it actually filling your cup? Or you are just trying to fill your own cup with like saving somebody? Because that can be also a heroine mentality coming from another trauma that you try to save somebody. So it's like we have to decide that I'm like loving this person and I'm grounded enough. I know who am I, and that's why I want to help them. What I want to, because of my own trauma, to try to save them, because that's when you feel the resentment. If it's actually filling your cup and you have good time together but sometimes things happen, then you have to decide that how long and what you are tolerating if you love yourself enough as a partner.
That's a fantastic point because there are some people out there who do have the savior complex. I need to
Yes,
save, I need to save, I need to save. And then you ask them, are you saving yourself? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm just so busy saving every single
everybody
person,
else,
right?
yes, yes. And again, it's just like, where are you, who you are in this picture, and how much you love yourself. So, as you mentioned, yes, so many of us is like it's easier to save somebody or feeling that is like I'm just giving, I'm just giving. But then inside you feel that resentment, this anger, this like I'm not feeling valued, that you have to face your own fears too or own challenges.
And I would ask those people that are doing that, I was like, do you feel worthy of being saved? Do you feel
Mhm.
valuable in someone coming out to you? Because it's not easy to be vulnerable, but when you're vulnerable, it's such a beautiful thing because it opens yourself up to maybe different scenarios, different emotions that you didn't think, maybe even a new identity where I'll give you the example. It's like the woman that, let's say she's a single mother, right? And she is working 8, 10, 12 hours and she's trying to be the best parent that she can be, the best parent. She has all these different hats. Or same thing for the single father, right? They're working, working, working because it's only them. And now their identity is only that. So now when someone comes along and they try to lessen the load and saying that, hey, you don't have to work 10, 12, 14 hours. I got this. Let me buy the groceries. Let me drive you to work. You're thinking, oh my God, is this person going to take advantage of me because that's all that you've known? You've been let down so often. The trauma runs so deep.
Yes.
This person coming along, they look differently, they're behaving differently. But when you look at them, all you can see is all the other people that have disappointed you generation after generation after generation. Do you see people projecting their trauma onto other people who may have good
Oh, yeah.
intentions, but they just see everyone as that one reminder of their trauma?
Absolutely. And I would like to mention 2 points. What you mentioned is so important, the identity. When this trauma becomes part of your identity and is like, identifying as a single struggling mother, when somebody tries to break that for you and like a nice guy comes and he says that, actually, you know what, I can help you with the grocery, it's like poking your identity. And actually, many people, or most of us, it's like our identity is like it's saint. You cannot touch it. So it takes a lot of time again. If and here comes it that do you want to let him in your life and be vulnerable? Are you courage? Do you have the courage to take and be vulnerable, or you say that no thanks, I don't believe you because as you mentioned, I'm just seeing this and this and this person who already treated me badly. But that's when family constellation or other holistic therapy or talk therapy can help. When you like you can break it, you can attract a different type of personality when you are breaking that cycle, when you are bringing that to awareness, to the from the subconscious level to the conscious level, that you've been doing this, and you say that, you know what, universe, God, whoever, is like, I'm ready for something different. Can you help me with this? Because I cannot do this alone.
Take us through the family constellation. How does that take us through the steps of that and how that helps them to break those cycles?
Sure. So in the family constellation has been around actually the 1970s, but is much more popular in Europe. Where is it coming from? Actually, it comes from a German psychologist. And what it says that, as I mentioned, that the challenge you or your children have, any emotional, mental, physical, environmental, financial wise, it might be that there was a trauma 7 generation back. So in a session, you don't have to know about this because of if you are lucky, you know maybe 2 generations back what happened. But even then, you might not know about a secret lover or an abuse or an aborted child or a suicide. Those are the family secrets we like to keep under the rugs. So we go back and you come to me and say that, okay, I have this problem. And we go back and see that which generations we have to identify the issue with. And actually, I'm actually using colored papers. And this is when the magic happens, and it's hard to explain. And that's when people are like, what? And no matter how many books you are reading about family constellation, there is this point when they cannot explain what's happening. But they're saying that the family conscientious, the family field opens up, or the morphogenetic field, where these where these events happened and imprinted, and they show us that what happened and when, and we can go back to the root. And you don't even know about this. So it's just like so interesting that you will see pictures. As I show these papers that can be people or concepts, you will have emotions. It's like, no, I am afraid of this, or it's like, oh, I want to give a hug, or, and you will come up with ideas, and I will see pictures, and that's when it's like, oh, this event happened, and we can give the responsibility and the burden back. Because what Heilinger, the founder of Family Constellation, said, that our love and loyalty is towards our family is above everything. Even if you say that, oh, I hated my dad, or I hated my mom, or this and this happened, and I'm not talking to them anymore, subconsciously, you want to belong. You want to be loved. You want to love them. You want to be loyal for them, to them. So you are carrying their burden in consciously, subconsciously. So what we do is actually we identify what happened, we go back to that generation, and we give back their stuff. So you don't have to carry anymore. So we are actually healing backwards and going forward. So that burden cannot be inherited because we brought it to the conscious level, and we actually healed it in the family web.
What are then some of the consequences of not healing generational trauma?
You are keep passing on. So you are, first of all, you are struggling. You are not living your life to the fullest. Even if, let's say, you have an amazing job, you find yourself every month that you are living to paycheck. And you are standing there that, why am I spending on some stuff that I don't even need? It's maybe because a great grandfather gambled the family money away, or somebody showed you like generations back that actually having money is dangerous because somebody was killed because of money. And then it's like you're afraid to have your subconscious wants to keep you in the safe place, but it's like, oh, I want to have the money, but actually I might die if I have the money, or maybe relatives would ask me money because that what happened generations back. So it's just like you have this like imbalance in you. So you are not living your life as the fullest, and you are struggling, or you are not finding the relationship, or you don't have kids, but you want to have kids. B, if you have kids, you are passing this trauma on to other generations.
If that when that does happen, is there a possibility that the trauma, the longer it goes on in that family, the more severe the consequences of it?
Good question. I'm not sure. It's what I see in our lives, that that your life or the universe is trying to give you a little sign, but the sign is bigger and bigger. I call it is like sometimes universe give you just a little flicker, and then a slap, and then there is a big kick into your rear end, and you get into like a huge accident. So something big is usually like, okay, life has been trying to tell me something, but I'm suppressing the emotions. Or like, for example, you don't like your job, but you cannot leave because I have bills to pay. You probably will twist your ankle, because actually ankle is stepping forward, and when your mind and your heart is not in alignment, that's when a lot of ankle issues are happening. So stuff like this can be that when something big is happening, there were probably signs, but you suppress them.
That example that you gave, that's one I like to use when it's to health, right? Like your body will whisper and then it will say, hey, pay attention. And then it will shout. By the time it
Shout,
gets to the
yes.
shout, everything after that, unfortunately, a lot of times you can't come back from. That's why I was
Hmm.
asking, because there's a number of people that I know that when they share their story of some of the struggles that they have, and then when they say that, well, my parents went through this, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what, my great grandparents went through this.
Hmm.
But when they tell it, their experience is so much more worse than, let's say, two, three generations before. So, for example, it could be that their great grandparents always had to work because they were bad with money and they're bad with handling personal relationships. So they just drowned themselves in work. So the worst thing that happened to them was instead of living the 80, 85 years that a lot of men live, they live, let's say, 75. But their life was pretty decent up until the point where they're about
Yeah.
to pass away. Now, 4 generations later, the person I was speaking to, they would lose feelings in their hands. They would have days where they can't walk because their legs don't use. They've had
Mhm.
slurred speech, so their body is reacting so much more severely to this trauma that goes back, in this example, who knows how long, but we know there's 4 generations of it. So that's why I always wonder because, like your body, the longer you ignore it, the worse potentially it can be. What do you see are some of the obstacles that maybe people face along their journey to healing the trauma?
So going back to the former generations and the severity, I was just recently listening a very good summary that what each generations, the boomers, the X, the Y, and the Gen Z people need to face with. And if you are thinking about the Maslow pyramid of like hierarchy of needs, just we are the generation that have the power, the capacity to actually start to break those trauma. We don't right now we are not in a war. It's not like supply chain issues. COVID is a different story, but it's like there are food on your shelf or in your pantry and on your table. You have shoes on your feet and you have plenty to buy. So it's like you have finally a little bit of headspace that actually to break that trauma because our former generations, my mom, sometimes I chat with her about these kind of things and it's like I didn't know. I was like, first of all, we just came out like the Berlin Wall went down when I was 5 years old, so we came out from a communist country model, tried to join and be more Western. It's like they had no clue. The whole country was in shambles. They didn't know the financial, how to build a financial system based what already the West had or the US had. And mom is like, I was struggling. I had your dad, but he didn't help. So when my mom would have the headspace with raising two children, plus a full-time job, plus an alcoholic dad, was like, sit down and meditate. So that's why I am the cycle breaker in this family because I have the headspace and I said that, okay, I recognize this and I will start to break this for my daughter and for the future generations.
I think some people minimize how good life is right now compared to
Oh,
how it
yeah.
was generations ago. Because as you mentioned, we don't have a world war and we don't have widespread famine. There's always that joke that people we've become so comfortable now we're able to think of problems that aren't necessarily problems that prevent us, as you mentioned, the hierarchy of needs, right? Where it's okay, do you have safety? For the most part, yeah. Do
Yep.
you have food? For the most part, yeah. Do you have shelter? Yeah, for the most part, right? So sometimes we get in our own way when it comes to some of these things because it wasn't that long ago where there was famine,
Yeah.
where there was war, right? Um, do you see society and maybe the expectations of society playing a role in some of the trauma that's now beginning or maybe not able to be broken by this generation?
But I would say that even if we have the headspace, as you mentioned, so many people are afraid to face that, and they still don't know that they have a choice. They are the victims of their own circumstances, and they might be afraid that so usually when you start to change and heal, first it gets worse and it hurts, but you can come up. But some people is like, you know what? I just like this lukewarm. I just like the swamp. Why should I jump out of this swamp and try to change or try to heal? And even if we try, we are carrying all what the former generations were passing on to us. So we are carrying them, plus also we are trying to be deal breakers.
So in a way, we've become comfortable in our own misery.
We are comfortable, but what I see is actually finally there is a collective awakening. And some or spiritual leaders, they are saying that since 2012 there is a collective awakening. And what I see that, yes, we talk more about mental health, we talk more about spirituality, we more talk more about inner child healing and trauma breaking or pattern breaking. So that's great, but we have to be more. Like, we have to be louder. We shouldn't be the minority who are healing, but the majority who is healing.
So if I were to take myself, Blanca, and say that today is the day that I want to identify the trauma that I'm going through, the trauma that's been passed down, and I want to start breaking it. So let's say my future children or my future partner is not impacted
Yeah.
by it. What are some of the first steps that you see people taking in that journey?
So again, it depends on where you are with your journey and how bold you want to be. I like my type A personality, and my Scorpion likes to like dive into the that's why talk therapy didn't work for me, because I felt that I'm always just scratching the surface talking about my parents. I needed something that brings me deep down, but it brings me up. And I like to know secrets. So that's why also family constellation works for me. I found my own modality that helped me a lot. But finding your modality and what you are comfortable with, how open you are. Do you want like traditional therapy? Traditional therapy is still better than nothing. Or it's just like, do you believe in energy healing? Do some energy healing, whatever works. Do some journaling, meditation. Money shouldn't be an issue and an excuse, because there are so much out there that you can download for free, or you can buy a notebook for $5 or not even that, and start to recognizing and writing daily. And I have, for example, a free trigger log on my webpage that is actually like you can track your events, who triggered you, what triggered you, how long did it take to get back to your neutral self, and how did it turn up in your body. It was your tummy, it was your head, it was like a sweaty palm. So all these can help you. Then just start it, like Nike, just do it, because that's why it's just anything helps than staying and stepping in this lukewarm sun.
That is a fantastic point because that's exactly what I went through, where there was things I was recommended. Some didn't work, some did. Some worked for, let's say, 6 months, some worked for three. Then you found
Yeah,
something else that worked for a full year. And I think everyone needs to understand that because if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that
absolutely.
it's not for you. Do you then see shame and guilt playing a factor in people's decisions to try one modality, and then when they do and maybe they don't get the success of their friends or someone they know, they're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to quit.
Yes, and it's like, oh, this is not working. Or shaming others on the internet saying that actually it worked for me is like, but it didn't work for me. It's okay. I tried so many modalities. I was very, very sick last year. Even the healers can get sick. So I was sick for 1.5 years, and I was desperate to heal because it was all on my face. My facial skin cracked daily and peeled. I had like severe allergic reaction. So I tried again so many different modalities again to support my healing, because family constellation is magic, but it's not magic. It cannot do everything for you. Same with talk therapy, or same with energy healing or other modalities. So again, be bold enough to try and don't give up. Just because one didn't work for you, it doesn't mean that the next person, or even like same modalities but different healers, and you are on a different page, and maybe you triggered that healer with your own stuff, but the other person is better in that issue or challenge. It's like that's why so many people are offering like a free chat. It's like, are we on the same page? I like to work with people who really want to have change, because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste my time. And actually, when I feel all this resistance, it's so much harder to work with a person. So it's like, go get out there, chat with people, read about these modalities and try that what would work for you.
And when we were trying these modalities, and I'll share an anecdotal experience for myself, some of the modalities, I'll be honest, looking back, Blanca, when I tried them and I didn't get the success, it wasn't necessarily the modalities because I wasn't ready.
Love that. You have to find, so you can try to push it through, but when your soul is not ready or where your subconscious is not ready to release, you can make cartwheels. It will not gonna happen. And this is what I tell to my clients, that it's like we are peeling onions layer by layer, and I cannot push it for you because your soul needs to be ready to release what we release, and we can work on what is ready to be released. No matter how much is like, okay, just let's dive deep and let's get this done in 1.5 hours. If you are not ready, your logical brain might say that because it's like I don't want to come back again, but you are not ready. We need to work in harmony so your body can heal and react and the soul the same way.
Yeah, there isn't a 90-day booty blaster for healing your trauma, right?
No. Yeah, I
It's gonna
wish, but
yeah, if everyone could be healed in 90 days, you and I would be out of
yeah.
a job at this point, right? And would be happy because everyone would be walking around in the best version of themselves, but it's going to take time. One thing I shared with someone, she's in her 60s,
Mhm.
and I work with her off and on, and then we're going to start working again. And I told her it's going to take you years. And she's like, Train, I'm in the twilight of my life. I was like, what you have to understand is your trauma, forget about the generation. Let's say your trauma started with your first marriage back when you're in your 20s. You have to go from that date to when you met me. You have all those years, right? I think I'm a great person. I'm not that great to heal all of that in a year, 2 years. Do
Yeah.
you find some of your clients, or maybe some people in general, have unrealistic expectations, which causes them undue pressure on their progress?
Yes. And that's theirs. That's not mine. So I it sometimes it hurts me too because it's like, oh, what did I do wrong? And again, this goes back to not taking it personal. It's not my journey, and I cannot save them. If they don't want to come back and chat with me, that's on them. And maybe they wanted faster results and it didn't come as fast as they wanted, and that's okay. So I have to or learn to respect their life and their decisions. And maybe they realize that, you know what, I'm not ready, and they didn't even want to admit to themselves that they don't want to heal. It's like, again, healing, it's not pretty, it's not magical unicorn pinky rosy rainbows. It's ugly. And I was just chatting on another podcast with somebody that, oh, our PR for healing is not that good because who wants to heal after you say that, oh, it can get ugly or it can hurt. But when you start it, there is no turning back. It's like sometimes I told my husband that I just want to be this ignorance is a bliss kind of person and just not dealing with it and just like live superficially. But I cannot. It's just there is no turning back. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, you can't put the beauty filter on someone's healing journey. It doesn't
No,
exist.
no, I love that. Yeah, no.
I there was that reminded me of I used to date this girl years ago, and she was making progress on her trauma journey. And she ended up, this was after we broke up. We kind of stayed in touch here and there, and she gave up on it.
Mm.
And when she was telling the story, I felt kind of bad because you hear the progress someone's making and then they give up on it. And she gave up on it because it was too much work and it was too tough. And she went back to everything that was causing trauma in her life. And it's heartbreaking to hear, but as a coach, that isn't uncommon for
No.
someone to make strides, realize there's a fork in the road. You want them to go right, but unfortunately, they'll go left. And when they go left, it's like a hard, sharp turn straight off the cliff, right back into what was causing the trauma. Do you see that happening? And what are your thoughts on that, those situations?
A very close to my heart point when I told this to my energy healing teacher that sometimes I just want to shake up my dad, that it's like, you need to change, you have to do something differently. And my energy healing teacher said then, Blanka, maybe this is his 10 out of 10. Maybe this is a 4 out of 10 for you. As a coach, I always like to scale things, but it's like maybe for his life, for this life, this is his 10 out of 10. And that's it. And that shifted my perspective that just because I feel that somebody's journey is right now is 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10, because they could do so much better and I'm cheering on the way to do that, maybe that's 10 out of 10 for them. And that's their life. Maybe that's what they are signed up for this life. And I have to accept that. So again, going back that that respecting others people's life, respecting that journey. And sometimes it's like I really would like to kick you and just like just help you, but I cannot. And then that stepping back moment is, I think, the toughest you can do for something who you love. Because when you see that they are failing, or you think you are failing, first of all, do you think that you are God to judge them why you think that they are failing? That's a big thing. Also, you never know how and when they will hit the rock bottom if you are letting them, and how that rock bottom will change their life. Because I tried to keep my dad up so long, and if I don't let him to fail, again, it's not me to judge, then he might not change. He might need that rock bottom. He needs that experience. And if you are taking away that experience from somebody because you want to help, you want to support, you are intervening. And that's what usually people are getting angry, because you want to help, but they don't want your help because they need that experience so they can experience something else. They can start to change or they can start to healing.
Yes, because someone's rock bottom could be ground level, and then someone else's rock bottom is 1,000 feet below sea level,
Yes.
right? Like their rock bottom, like just because when we made the change, we hit a certain ground level, that doesn't mean that that's the same level for someone
No.
else. And to your point, I think one of the biggest heartbreaks for people watching it is that you want them to do better. Maybe they're crying out to do better, but at that point in time, they truly don't want to do better because they maybe haven't hit their rock bottom. Or, as we talked about earlier, maybe they want to be that way, right? We
Yes.
can't tell them to live the better life because now we're basing it off of our standards. Is that hard for people to come to terms with?
Yes, I think it's one of the hardest thing, accepting that, as I mentioned, it's stepping back, because it's easier to feel that I'm helping and I'm actually accepting and making peace with it. And we are playing gods. Who do you know that how so our logical brain is trying to override their higher self and what they are doing. That's just not right. Again, as you mentioned, it's like their rock bottom, maybe the ground level for somebody, or maybe like 13 levels downhill. It's their journey. And yes, it's very hard. I can tell from my personal experience, it's very hard to step back and just let them be. But I made peace with it. Sometimes there are days that I still want to, but it's better for me and it's better for him. Our relationship is much better because I don't try to change him.
Well, let me ask you one final question before I let you go. I want to give you three wishes. And these are, you can use three things you wish people knew about this one question.
Okay.
What are three things you wish people knew about accepting themselves and understanding that they're responsible for their actions only versus other people? And why?
Three things. First of all, you are lovable. And that's huge. When you realize that you are a lovable person, you don't try to like sweat and blood and just do something, because you accept that actually I'm lovable for who am I, not because of my achievements, my grades, or anything what I'm doing. So you are lovable. You have more control than you think you have because you always have a choice. You always can make a choice. Sometimes you don't like the choice, but you always have a choice to change. And as you mentioned, you are responsible. You are responsible for your own behavior. What others are doing